All right, we'll call the Tuolumne County Transit Agency meeting to order. This would be the opportunity for oral communication to allow the public to speak on any item not on the printed agenda. Oh, you just made it.
Well, I want to request the free gift of public funds that was given to the Trado Commission for their unruly brews and whatever. So this one actually had the event application because in less than a month we now have somebody else who wants free service. So I'm looking here at the criteria for being considered for special event transportation services, and I don't see anything in here that
Carol,
would qualify.
That is an agenda item, so can we hold that?
Trado's not.
Well, the issue is.
Okay,
So
well.
if you can limit your comments to, and not go into the agenda item, that'd be better.
Okay, well, I think it was a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Any other oral communication, public comment? All right, seeing none, go to the consent calendar. Item 2, approval of the August 9th, 2017 meeting minutes.
Move the approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, seeing none, motion carries. Regular agenda, item 3, progress report on the construction of the Tuolumne Transit Center.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Tyler to cover this item.
All right, thank you, Darren. Well, we're almost to the finish line. We've got this update and then an item on the agenda, and actually several items on the agenda as far as trying to close this out. But just a quick update with what's happening on the site currently. The road is paved. The building is substantially complete. At this point, we are just cleaning up punch list items, completing signage, doing the final landscaping, and then testing and balancing of all the mechanical systems. We've been on the site quite a bit recently, doing walks with the architects and the landscape architects and the mechanical folks, and are real pleased. The building looks nice. Everything turned out essentially the way that it was designed. And at this point, we are looking at the end of this week as the substantial completion date. I know on the agenda it lists the 20th, and I think that's what we were expecting at the time. And but everyone at this point is working towards the end of the week where we'll get keys and have access to the building. At this point, we expect to begin working on a couple of follow-up items, including placing the furniture, putting our bus stop kiosks on the site, placing the trash cans, final items that were not included as part of the contract that staff will be executing here in the final days as we prepare for readying the site to serve the public. And let's see here. Additionally, we've got some of the technology-based items that are still being tested, the surveillance cameras, but we've started to meet with our local law enforcement folks to give them tours of the site so they're familiar with it, and do some of the final safety-related follow-ups to bring the buses onto the site and to practice all the turn-around movements, coordination with Signal Service, who will provide response to the site in addition to the Sheriff's Department. So there'll be a couple follow-up items as that would be potential additional work items, including the polishing of the floor and the setting of the ribbon cutting date. So that completes my update, unless your director has anything else you'd like to add.
Probably the only thing else I'm going to add is that when the contractor leaves the site, which is here in the next week, they have a fence, security fence that keeps people from going back there. Concerns were expressed about people getting back there, not necessarily just potential vandalism to our transit center, but to the site overall. court's property and whatnot. So there was a gate that was used for probation with concrete K-rails on each side. We're going to bring back that gate and put it in. We've been working with Mo to put that in. It'll be put in just past the probation department. And that'll allow each morning when our driver comes in, he'll open the gate, open it up. Construction of folks going to the jail site will have access. We'll probably give them a key as well, should they need it. And then the driver will open up the whole transit center. And, you know, at the end of the day, the last driver will close everything up, including the gate. So that should help a measure of security. As Tyler said, we are placing, speaking of security, placing cameras, making sure that that's all in place, working with facilities we're going to contract with Signal Service to maintain our alarm system for us and whatnot. So,
And the cameras are inside and outside?
inside, outside, every inch of that property is covered by cameras, high def cameras. And we'll have access also to our desktops, and then eventually down to our transit office. Dispatch will have cameras as well.
Does the sheriff department have access to the cameras?
Yeah, but they won't be actively monitoring them.
But they have access to them if
Yes.
they choose to?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to also say that I did get a chance to take my wife out to the transit center and look at it, get her perspective on it. She was very impressed with what a beautiful facility it is. You know, on one hand, we're very proud of that we're treating our customers as valued customers, not some sort of second-class citizen in any way, giving them the proper amenities. At any time you access government service, you should have proper facilities like courts and the like. But having said that, some folks from the public may be concerned about how nice it is, and it's a big upgrade from what public transit folks are used to and accustomed to, or perhaps the public seeing. So I think it's important to remind everybody, these are almost entirely Proposition 1B bond funds that are specifically designated for public transit and nothing else. So we had to use them on public transit, and I think we put to great use. But for those that, as elected officials, you may get concerns raised, why aren't we spending this on potholes in front of my house and things like that? And so just realize this can only be used on public transit, and I think we put to good use. That's it.
Okay, any questions for?
Yeah, in the photo, there's the white, I guess that's concrete sidewalk-looking thing, and then the street. So when buses are gonna come up to load and unload, are they gonna drive up to that concrete? I mean, they're not, that's sidewalk, right?
That is a parking pad. What you don't see is
That
the
is
finished sidewalk that has now been poured, but it wasn't poured when this picture was taken. You can faintly see the curb line there, where there'll be about a 12-foot clear sidewalk along that whole stretch. But
Oh,
when you park a bus, they tend to and stop a lot. With AC, asphalt concrete, it tends to push a little bit and creep around, and
Ah.
the concrete's much more sturdy, and it'll provide a long life
okay.
surface.
That's what it is. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any public comment? All right, and this is just for our benefit and the public's benefit? No action, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, item 4. Discuss a possible date to celebrate the grand opening of the new transit center.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you may recall, you've gotten a few emails from Denise over the last few weeks trying to pin down dates for the grand opening ceremony. We have done our best to reach out to the full city council and board of supervisors and this group and others, important people in the community, and October 30th is the date that appears to work best for the majority of people. Having said that, I'm a little disappointed in that both Maureen Frank, who's been a very important person in this whole process, will be on vacation at that time, as will the construction supervisor. But their vacations are wide enough and long enough that I really can't work around those.
Since we started that process, I was open on the 30th, but I'm no longer there. I'm going to be gone from the 26th to the 30th.
Okay.
So, you can do it without me. I'm going to get out there before I leave, so.
We were hoping to open it up for service to the public on November 1st, so would the 31st work for everybody?
Tuesday, the
No.
31st, won't work for you, huh?
It might.
Because it's a.
We can certainly change the time of day, do something in the evening.
5
to work.
Tuesday month, but, on that Tuesday, 12 o'clock, most of the people I see here, I've seen out eating lunch at noon. Even Supervisor Royce eats lunches.
Our intention is to provide refreshments.
Ribbon cutting on Halloween, huh?
Could be fun.
So what time? Noon?
Yeah. Noon is what we would normally propose if that would work with everybody, but we can certainly move it to after hours, 5 o'clock or so.
Noon on 31st.
I
That
can't do
works.
it, I can't do it noon on 31st, but that's okay. You can,
When can you?
if you get the majority, huh?
When can you?
Because I'll probably be, because I'm having cataract surgery that day.
Oh.
So you're probably
You can
out.
postpone that.
I know. Go ahead and just set it.
Well, I'm whatever this group would like.
Just set it. I mean, we've gone through, there's so many of us to try and coordinate schedules with, so.
We could send a bus to pick her up after she's done.
There
We're
you
good at
go.
that.
Okay.
We can wheel you around on a cart and
Yeah, you
everything.
could.
All right, I'll make a motion, 31st at noon.
Okay.
Bring your costumes.
We'll make candy
That's
available to the
Halloween.
kids.
Yeah, I'm questionable on that
Go
date.
back to the 30th and trade Connie for John.
That's
I'll
fine.
double you.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Whatever.
I just know I can't, when I started it, I was open, but, it's
All
been a
day?
while. I won't be back.
Okay. You can go back to another week.
Yeah, we can certainly move it another week.
I don't know.
Go back to,
26th, that was the other option at the time.
Yeah, that was a date. Denise, do you remember how well that worked out? That was a pretty strong date, as I recall.
yeah, but and I can't do the 26th.
Oh,
Sounds like
See?
we're back to the 30th.
I think we're back to the 30th.
Either way, you're going to have somebody missing.
I'll make it work. You just costing me.
Oh,
Well, you could do it later. I mean, don't have to have it.
I just want to get this over with at this point, so somebody pick.
30th, what time?
We proposed noon originally, but we can move it around if you like.
30th noon work?
30th at noon.
So
Evan, you
moved.
can come at lunch.
That's okay.
It's okay.
I'll do that.
30th at noon.
Yep.
I'll be thinking about you.
Lucky you, John. All right, so that's a motion. Amended motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oops, I forgot to ask for public comment.
Yes, you
Sorry.
did.
Darn.
But I wasn't important enough.
No, you can come on.
Can you make it on the 30th?
I just figured we had a date. Quick! All right, October 30th at noon.
Okay.
Thank you. Phew. All right, ready to move on to item 5? Contract award to polish concrete floor at transit facility.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you might recall, we had a previous discussion about what to do with flooring in the transit facility. And at the conclusion of that effort, staff was directed to go forward with a request for bids on polishing the concrete floors. We did send out a package to numerous contractors that were on a list of contractors that do this type of work. Unfortunately, we did not receive any bids. Obviously, they're all very busy these days, and this is a relatively small job in a relatively remote location. So we did extend the bids out because we had heard that there may be one contractor, particularly a local contractor, interested in bidding. So we reached out specifically to that individual and a couple others extended the bid deadline by about a week to 10 days, and we received one bid. And so we've looked at that bid. It is expensive, but with prevailing wage, what isn't expensive on a public facility?
Cheaper than putting flooring down.
I think this is cheap.
Oh, is it?
I think it's good.
It is?
I think it's really good.
I was gonna ask what 1320 is.
What's the square footage again?
About 1,000 square foot.
That's a good price.
Yeah. I have noticed this surface now that I'm more aware of it in Lowe's and Walmart and all these high-traffic public places.
It's
So
better than a coating. Polishing is way better,
Yeah.
durability-wise.
And that's where we start out as a coating,
Yeah.
and you suggest against it.
The only thing in this quote that I saw that it says it's only going to 800 grit. I know the spec was 15. Did they do that for a reason? Did you ask them about that? There is a difference.
Yeah, we allowed them to bid it at both the 800 and the 1500 grit, you
Yeah.
know, and the amount of polish that creates
Yeah.
the shine. And then after looking at, you know, the difference between the shine and the cost difference, there was a couple
much?
extra grand for the about $2,000 for the additional for the 1500 grit.
I would try to do that if I were you.
You can reward it that way, and it's already.
I'd give you the option. When you do mock-ups, you can kind of tell, but I think the other thing,
What's the difference?
there's more shine to it, but it also is more dense. The more you polish it, the harder it gets. They're going to use a sealer. It doesn't say exactly what sealer, but I know the spec calls for a densifier, and that's what really makes it durable. If it's just normal concrete, traction over time will wear, you know, where the travel and stuff is. But a good densifier and a good high polish will make this thing bomb-proof. It makes it like granite.
And if we have enough money to do it, then it would make
I would do it.
more sense.
Long-term, I just think it'll last and be better.
If you want to make a motion on that.
What is the full aggregate exposure not guaranteed?
The more they grind, the more it shows the aggregate, the rock that's in the concrete. So when you finish concrete normally, you see all the
Push the rock
cream.
down.
You see the cream and you just see that smooth finish. So that's more of an aesthetic thing. Also, the farther you polish down, the more bubbles you expose and the more filling. So it's actually better. This is good.
Okay.
That's a good value point. I just think higher polish is a little better. So with that, I'll make a motion to award this, and I'll award it to allow the option to include the higher polish if you feel it's necessary. After you guys see a mock-up, he'll go 800 before 1500. If you decide it's good enough and you want to save the money or you need to for any other unforeseens, I'll leave that up to your discretion.
I'll second.
But if you make it happen, get her done.
Okay.
All right, public comment?
I want to thank you for your expertise.
You're welcome.
So if you think it'd be better, then I'm okay with that. I trust you. So I see what happens to the concrete in downtown Sonora. So if people bring their dogs and people decide they're going to pee all over the concrete, does that make it
It'll be
easier
fine.
to clean? Or,
Yeah, this is easier to clean, easier to maintain.
and what about gum?
Same thing. It'll be less, it's easier to clean off because it's like if gum was stuck to glass or gum stuck to,
Because downtown on the sidewalks, it's nasty.
it gets into the pores. Yeah, and it
Okay.
shoves it into that surface.
And that
This,
won't happen with this?
you could scrape it off.
So we'll be okay with the pee, the poop, the vomit, the gum,
Yeah,
all that?
literally. It's
Because
more,
I've been
it's,
cleaning
I
it
think
up.
we're
I know
R-rated,
how
aren't we?
hard
it's
it is.
more impervious,
Okay.
or less impervious, I should say.
impervious.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
I approve, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just make sure that it's not a topical sealer, that they're doing a densifier. That's a big deal. They know, I see it in the spec, on their quote, it just says apply sealer and buff.
I think I got your cell phone. I might be calling you. to
I wouldn't
help.
mind, I'll take a field trip and
Okay.
when they're doing the mock-up, before they actually go to do the final product, call me out and I'll,
Yeah, we're just a couple knuckleheads that can probably.
no,
be
you guys are
caught
doing
here.
good. It looks good. It's gonna turn out nice.
Oh, the site looks great.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, huh?
I'm not going to go there. Item 6, approving a, don't do that. Approving a request for trolley service at Oktoberfest event in Twain Harte, sponsored by the Twain Harte Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Tyler's been working on this item, and then I'd like to make a comment at the end of it.
Thank you. So we received a request from the Twain Harte Area Chamber of Commerce to serve the Oktoberfest event. I think this is the 13th or the 14th annual. They do it right downtown there in the heart of Twain Harte at Epperson Park, and so parking is a premium. They've got a number of vendors that are out there as part of the event, and again, so the ability to drive into the location is limited. So we went up and we met with the chamber folks, and so their request is for a trolley that will hit various locations throughout Twain Harte, starting at 10 to bring folks down to the event, as the vendors will be out there before the event actually starts. Or at least the Oktoberfest part of it, and then through the end of it, which would be 4. So it's about 6 hours of service with the trolley, just kind of making these continuous loops through the community, moving folks to and from the event itself. After reviewing their application and talking with them, they meet the criteria that your board has established for serving such an event. At 6 hours of service, be roughly $500 to serve the event. After reviewing it, we're recommending approval of this event for trolley service.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention that, not necessarily related to this or any other special event service, but given some of the extra attention we received lately over special event transportation services, I want to let you know that once we get the transit center opened up, Tyler's going to have a little more time on his hands, and I've tasked him with putting an agenda item together to kind of revisit the whole special event services and what our policies are in that regards. We've had this in place for a few years. It's probably appropriate that we give it another review and look and make sure it's functioning the way we want it to. So I'll commit to bringing that back at a later date.
Okay.
Well, the current policy does include nonprofit.
Yeah, this project is in nonprofits. Everything we've done today is consistent, to date, is consistent with our policies, and I've been double checking those things with the law as well as with legal counsel. But I think there are some important policy discussions to have now that we've been doing this for a while.
Well, I think if we continue with serving the public in this way, or serving the nonprofits, I guess, better way to put it in this way, I think we're going to need some guidelines, and maybe that's what you're talking about. I'm not sure, but there's got to be some guidelines. You're talking about a bus going through different areas of Twain Harte to pick up people, or are we just going to the one place in the shopping center there?
Primarily the shopping center, down to the park and back.
And isn't that about 3 blocks or so from where the event is held?
It's
It's not really blocks, but it's.
Yeah,
it's one
quarter
big
mile.
long block.
Quarter mile?
Yeah.
So I think those kinds of issues need to be in some sort of a list of what we can look at, or what.
Yeah,
you know.
George, just to be clear, I know this happened before your time. We passed a resolution that has a lot of the criteria, and I think I've included that in a prior
Okay.
agenda packet. So we always stay consistent with the policies and criteria of that resolution, and we don't bring it forward with a recommendation for approval unless we're consistent with that. But I think that we've been going through this long enough, a number of issues. We've learned a few things. We will need to check back with the board on things like, we don't charge a fare. Do we want to charge a fare? Or do we want to do donations? Things like, do we want to have some sort of reciprocal advertising? We oftentimes negotiate that, but we should have it as part of our policy. Just things like that to clean up the policy from a standpoint of lessons learned. Mr. Chairman, we do have somebody here from the Twain Harte Chamber of Commerce that may want to speak to the matter as well.
Okay. That would be that opportunity.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Pam Jones. I'm from the president of the Twain Harte Chamber. You know everybody. Connie, I get cataract surgery tomorrow, so I understand. I do have a handout for each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like one as well?
Yes, please.
Denise, did you get one?
Denise, I'll hold one for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I go right by you?
No, that's
I probably
okay.
did. I was thinking of the boys. Okay, thank you. I feel very honored that you have taken our consideration and have approved it. Thank you. It means a lot to us. This is my first year of doing a bigger mock-up, if you will, of the Oktoberfest, so we're expecting a lot more people. So it's going to be a really great event, so I hope that you'll all come. But I do appreciate the transportation, though. That was going to be one of our big sticking points, is how do we possibly park 500 cars? It's just, it's out of the realm in Twain Harte, if you're familiar with it. So being a nonprofit and being the chamber, I really appreciate it. So if anybody has any other questions on this, I know that this form, my cover letter says 11 to 4. That's something that maybe we could start at 10:30, because we don't want people arriving too soon, because our event does not actually start, which is what people are mostly coming for, until 11. So if that's possible, that would be great. Other than that, I think I gave you everything you need, and you gave me everything I wanted, so we're all happy campers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah. He's like amped up. Do you have
Usually.
questions, comment? No. Okay.
Just ready to go.
All right, any public comment on this item?
Well, I think it would be a good idea to bring this back later, and I'll have a lot to say at that time. But I went to the, what's it called, the Royal Flush Crapper Derby?
Uh-huh.
I don't remember, is that the Rotary that sponsors
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes.
So they employed a Black Oak shuttle that went, and so they stopped and offered me a ride, and I was just going to walk. But, like, there's no sidewalks up there. So it's kind of dangerous to try to walk from the parking lot over to Epperson Park. So I got on her trolley with her, and she was very interesting. But I didn't see a lot of people using it. But they still use the Black Oak shuttle service for that, and it was handy. But this at least is not a for-profit private event, so I'm stuck with it, but.
Thank you. So Darren or Tyler, I have one question. It's on the post-event summary, or page 2 of the application. It's in our packet as well. And this is one of those things we were talking about evaluating, where down at the bottom, post-event summary, number of attendees, 500. I think we're going to be maybe looking at actual ridership. Maybe we're talking about that. Is that what really, the number that we're really looking for there, or is it the number of attendees at the major event?
Chair, are you looking at the form
page.
itself? Right, and so where it says TCTA,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Sandy did
You-
put that on a couple of them,
That's
because
okay.
she got it in the wrong place. She says, oh, no, this is for post. So, anyway, she did get it wrong. But we are expecting hopefully 500 to ride and 250 to park or walk.
Right.
yeah, so I think that'll be one of the things that we look to bring back, as part of the policy discussion, is after each event that we approve, that very next month to follow up, what was the ridership, what was the overall cost, is this event that we, feel like should be served in the future, and then for our, really popular services that, we see a lot of folks taking advantage of every year, great, but for those that we thought was going to be, a great ad, but maybe didn't pan out that way, to either, ask for some changes in the next year's event, or, decide that maybe it's not a good fit for the program.
Okay.
I have a, I have a comment. When I looked on the Twain Harte Chamber website for the time that this event, it says it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. So just so you all are aware what's on your website.
I appreciate that. I noticed that today when I checked that site as well, and so we'll follow up and make sure we get that updated.
Okay, any other public comment? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Before I do, I'll make a quick statement. I wasn't here for the last month's meeting that had this item that kind of became kind of a sticky issue, which is somewhat related to how some people are looking at this. But I just want to make a point that, first of all, I support this heavily, and I think it's fantastic, and I really appreciate the Chamber putting on these kind of events, because not only is it entertaining, but it greatly adds to our community and the value of our community, and there's an economic component to it, as well as just the overall vibrancy and health and welfare of our community. Having activity is a good thing. And I think we should try to do this as much as possible. I wouldn't care if it was every single weekend, to get people moving, to have activities where people are coming up from the Valley or the Bay Area and spending money, staying in hotel rooms and going out to eat. I don't think this is a gift of public funds in any way, shape, or form, even if this was for profit, because you're not mobilizing equipment for an entity. You're bringing people who are private individuals to an event. It's no different, in my opinion, than if you bring somebody to work at Walmart. Walmart's making money off that person working for them, but they're not paying for it. So I think anytime we can up our ridership, we can add to the viability of an event, add to tourism and that whole industry, we should try to do that. I think you guys are smart in the way you're approaching it, in looking at events and seeing how much ridership, how much value are we really adding, and maybe reassessing for the next year to try to improve that. I think that's great. But the overall purpose and mission of what we're doing here, I think is fantastic, and I don't think it should be twisted around. And I appreciate Carol, your integrity in trying to protect public funds, and I totally understand that. But like I said, if you were actually loading up, you know, all of the equipment for a business, and then you're taking all their stuff, I could see something like that. You know, they're taking their chairs. But if you're just bringing people back and forth, I think it helps those people. And even though the business benefits from the volume, there's a separation there that I think makes it okay. And I think it also helps, if we do it right, could help prevent people from getting DUIs, helps make this community safer so that you don't have those people driving and potentially getting in accidents. And then parking is a huge issue. We're a sprawled out community. You've got, it's difficult, city of Sonora or anywhere in this county, you don't have 500 or 700 parking spaces like, you know, somewhere, you know, the State Fair or something like that. So we have to be creative, and I think this is a really good way to do that. So I just don't want it to look negative, because I think it's great. So that's my speech. I'll make a motion to approve it. Yes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Public hearing.
All right, item 7, public hearing to consider approval of Resolution 43-17, adopting the final proposed fiscal year 2017-18 budget for the public transit system.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you might recall, in May, we presented and you approved a recommended budget for the public transit system. And it's appropriate that we bring forward a final budget once all the books have closed on the fiscal year and we're able to figure out what fund balance we have and what the final estimates on revenues and expenditures are going to be for the upcoming year. I'm going to ask that Laura Shin, our budget analyst, go through some of those changes, and I'll probably have a couple wrap-up comments at the end.
Good afternoon. We had some changes in our fund balance. if you see, there was $365,621 that was unexpected. Most of that was due to the transit center having not been completed, some of the expenditures and the fund balances carrying forward into this year. Cal OES, same thing. There's some surveillance and lighting purchases that are going to carry forward and be liquidated in this fiscal year. We did have a new estimate for state assistance funds, and due to the SB1, they have increased our allocation, or our estimated allocation, to be about $406,000, which gave us an increase of $204 on that line item. CMAC had a $5,000 change. We've decided not to purchase the bus radios. We're going to close out that grant. And then a small technical adjustment, just moving from one account to the other. In expenditures, there was a small adjustment to post-retirement medical. Of course, the increase from the approval of Resolution 4117 to the special events. We added $3,000 to the special events line item, bringing that to $16,000. A technical adjustment of $53,000. There was a formula error in the recommended budget. Of course, the $286,000 in transit expenditures that will be paid this year, and an increase of $58,000 on the special equipment line, and that has a lot to do with that Cali OES expenditure being carried forward along with the revenue. Do you have any questions, concerns?
I just wanted to point out a couple little things that are kind of subtle but worth noting in our budget. We did not get an updated state transit assistance estimate from the state since January, and obviously in May, SB1 passed. And California Transit Association's estimate will get an additional $200,000 this year. It'll probably go up even more next year because SB1 is phased in, and transit gets money out of late fees. But why that's important is we're not proposing any major expansions on transit in the next year. The only expansion we may do beginning next summer is service to Pinecrest, but that's with some money out of greenhouse gas emissions reduction funding that we have to use on transit, or something that will reduce carbon emissions. My point being is that in rural counties, we're able to, whatever we don't spend on transit in our local transportation funds, pass through to rural roads. And this extra $200,000 will likely result in even more pass through next year because we're kind of holding our budget tight. So I just want to pass that on, that where we can, we're making money available to road maintenance.
The only question I had to do with the radios. What was the intent? What was the purpose? And why were they decided they weren't needed?
We had, I think it was CMAQ dollars, air quality funds, federal air quality funds, I might add, to purchase buses, and part of that was also to buy radios for them. And when the buses arrived, we didn't have the radios yet. We were kind of working our way through the bid process. The mechanic just pulled the radios out of the old buses before they were surplus and sold off and put them in the new buses, and they worked fine. In the meantime, we're working our way through the federal process with California Air Resources Board and Caltrans, and they've continued to increasingly ask for more information and more justification. And at some point we stopped and said, this isn't worth it anymore. And we're just going to let the funds go. I mean, it's $30,000 or something. We couldn't use it all anyways with the radios. We probably over budgeted, but there's just too much paperwork. It just didn't justify when we had the need met anyways with just using recycling old
and
radios.
We've got the radios and they're working and we're fine. Okay.
And we even have spares at this point.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, let me open, this will be that opportunity for public hearing. Any public comment on the approval of Resolution 43-17, adopting the final proposed fiscal year 17-18 budget for public transit system. All right, seeing none, close the public hearing. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Give it to George, he's quicker.
George, got that? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That was one of the quickest, I think. Item 8, adopt Resolution 42-17, adopting updated Title VI policy for the Tuolumne County Transit Services.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was time for our update of the Title IX policy. Title IX generally means that we will not discriminate, particularly in regards to persons of limited English proficiency. We have updated our plan consistent with federal requirements and Caltrans oversight, and we're recommending that you approve this updated document. The main thing I can tell you about how we deal with persons of limited English proficiency is we have to post on our website and our schedule brochures that if somebody needs assistance to call us and let us know, or email us and let us know, and we will. The county has people that I think they get a little small bump in their salary to be available as persons with second languages that we can reach out to and help engage these folks and find out what they need. It may come that we need to provide some additional written material or show them how to make the website in a different language. But for the most part, we just basically let them know that call us and we'll work through the problem with you. And then there's, of course, if they have an issue, there's a process that we've adopted in this plan to appeal any needs they have. So with that, and I do thank Laura for helping us put this plan back together. With that, I'd recommend your approval.
So Darren, how often do you get a call?
I don't think we've gotten any.
Thank you.
So you have to do this?
Yes.
Every time? Sweet. Let me
We-
guess what the second language is.
Could be anything.
Yeah? Okay.
Although I will.
Mandarin?
I should point out that our Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee did ask us to. We have to provide a sentence, or excuse me, a few paragraphs is a better way of putting it, in our brochures and our website, explaining how we will provide this service to you upon request. They asked us to print that in Spanish as well on our brochures and our website, so we've done that. So maybe that answers your question, Spanish.
Duh. It's okay.
All right, any other questions? No. Any public comment? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Move on recommendation.
Got a motion? Anybody
I'll
seconds?
second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 9, reports. Laura, thank you for your work on the budget. Sorry about that, I almost forgot that. You're welcome. Thank you. And then Title 9. What was that, Title 6? Wow, yeah.
Yeah, on that, I should probably.
Flashbacks to my prior career.
Before I get into my reports, I should probably note that you, as a board, as did I, have a lot of concerns about losing Diane Bynum. She'd been with us for so long. She knew all of our budgets like the back of her hand. And Laura, we've had some overlap that helped from a training standpoint, but she's done a remarkable job. She's befriended Debbie Batista. They meet regularly, and I'm feeling very confident that our finances are in good regards.
Good job.
Okay, I also want to just real quickly report, if someone didn't catch it in my previous discussion on the opening of the transit center, we do intend to open up the transit center on November 1st to the public. We'll probably have a small party for the public to introduce them to the site and our riders. But also noteworthy is we will be implementing our new transit schedules that are getting ready to go out for print. We will circulate those at least several weeks in advance of the changes so people can begin to organize their lives around them. And then also, you did approve some fare increases about a year ago, and they're supposed to go into effect at January 1st when the new transit center opened up. Well, we were waiting for the transit center to come in, and then we had all these delays and other issues, losing a vendor, unfortunately. But fare increases will go into effect on November 1st, as well as the new schedules.
Pay for the new transit center, right?
Yeah, with a new transit center. So that's information out there to the public. And we will make sure that people are notified well in advance.
Newspaper, radio.
And
look at-
on our
look at
buses
the-
themselves.
Mr. Socks.
That's all I have for reports on transit.
All right. Mr. Baker, any reports here?
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question to Mr. Grossi regarding Tuolumne County Transit Authority? Since I've been on this, with this group, we've not talked much about Saturday, Sunday service. I'm sure it's come up in the past, and I would like to see us, along with the special event type of applications, that we talk about, again, about Saturday, Sunday service. I've had a couple of people come to me and say, why doesn't the why doesn't the transit service run on the weekends? Especially for low-income workers like hotel workers, restaurant workers, et cetera. I don't know, I can't quantify any of that, but it's a request that's come to me.
Sure. We will bring back a detailed agenda item and kind of revisit the overall issue. We do operate a general public dial ride from, I think it's 9 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. It's not a full service, but it's a limited service, and we don't have any service on Sunday. Generally, just in a nutshell, in the transit industry, it's understood that the ridership you get typically on a Monday through Friday, you'll get 50% of that on a Saturday, and then 50% less again on a Sunday. Reason being is you have so many family members at home, they typically give you a ride around. And many of the businesses are shut down Monday through Friday, schools, public institutions and whatnot. So, but we can certainly go through that with an agenda item and talk about some of our past efforts in that regards and the results we had.
So when my elderly mother was still living and couldn't drive, she would have, and no family member was available to take her to church, it would have been nice to have something, so.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring it up to make sure it's covered.
We will.
Okay. Any other reports? Seeing none, we will adjourn the Tuolumne County Transit Agency. Give about a minute to switch gears. All right, we'll convene the Tuolumne County Transportation Council. This would be the opportunity for public comment to speak on any item not on the printed agenda. Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. Item 2, approval of the August 9, 2017 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, another public hearing. Public hearing to consider approval of Resolution 572-17, adopting the final proposed fiscal year 17-18 budget for the Tuolumne County Transportation Council.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Laura go through this item, and then I'll have a comment or two at the end.
Again, this reflects our books being closed for 16-17 fiscal year. So we get final numbers, including fund balance and things like that. We had an increase of $190,000 in our fund balance. We carried over some PPM funds, $43,000. We have been approved on our OWP to do a 10% de minimis rate for our indirects charge. Last year, we did an exchange of RSTP funds with the county for their general funds to cover these costs. That's not happening this year, so we're going to cover that with a 10% de minimis rate across all funding. And so that will be, that's been built into this year's budget, and it will be put into some of it's already hit the OWP for fiscal year 17-18. We'll build in the rest of the funds at that point. A de minimis rate is a straight 10%. I calculated it covers our indirect cost. And we, at that point, we don't have to do a bunch of paperwork to the state to get a whole narrative and cost allocation plan. And it's just an unquestionable. They just give you that right off the top. So we've decided that that's the way we're going to go. In doing that, it made available $125,000 in RSTP funds. With that, we have more funds for road projects, and we'll have an extra $85,000 in the TCTC budget. On the other hand, we've lost 125 general funds, so you'll see that adjustment there. Expenses, in talking with Debbie, we had an unfunded employee leave liability amount of $22,000. We built that into the budget, so at this point we'll be square with that fund also. It will be funded at 100%. Other than that, there's not much else going on in this budget, unless you have any questions. No.
Any questions?
And just one final comment, if I may. As you might recall, in May, we adopted was it May or June, the recommended budget? June, okay. We adopted the recommended budget in June, which allowed us to calculate how much pass-through we can have of our RSTP funds, which was at that time estimated to be $141,000. We did a call for projects from the city and the county. With more carryover, we're able to increase that amount to $181,000 with the adoption of this budget. So that's an important note.
I think it's important to note it's not going to reduce the amount of money that the county is going to had budgeted for the work that they were going to do.
That's correct. In this case, everybody should walk away satisfied. I would note that of the $141,000, the county asked for the whole amount. The city asked for $40,000, so we're able to fund both applications for funding in 100%. And that's, I think, your very next agenda item. But it's kind of tied into this budget adoption, so I wanted to point that out.
Santa arrived with extra gifts, so
Yeah, it's only
everybody got
September.
what they wanted this time around.
All right, with that, I will open the public hearing to consider approval of the Resolution 572-17, adopting the final proposed fiscal year 17-18 budget for the Tuolumne County Transportation Council. This would be that time. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 572-17, approving the TCTC final budget for fiscal year 2017-18 as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Oops. Well, this one's, okay, item 4. Adopt resolutions 570-17 and 571-17, allocating a total of $181,507 in Regional Surface Transportation Program Exchange Reserve Funds to the City of Sonora and the County Community Resources Agency, and for projects that meet the criteria for RSTP exchange funds.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I just noted, with the adoption of your final budget, you have additional funding available to meet the city and county's requests for full funding. We recommend approval of resolutions 570-17 allocating $40,000 to the city of Sonora, and 571-17 allocating $141,507 to the County Community Resource Agency. Your TAC and CAC also supported this recommendation.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, any public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of Resolution 570-17 and 571-17.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion is approved. Item 5, direct staff to submit 2 applications for the Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grants Program, Tuolumne Active Transportation Plan, and the SR 120 Yosemite National Park Complete Streets Congested Corridor Plan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, SB1 has provided additional funding for transportation planning grants. We anticipate a call for projects, and we would like to get your approval to go forward with a couple grant applications. We'd like to get the approval while it's still a concept before we put a lot of effort into an application. And for that matter, certainly get your input on alternative applications you may see as a priority. But the 2 applications, and discussing it with staff and working with our partners, that we recommend is first that we apply for funding to update our bicycle and pedestrian plans. The modern terminology is active transportation plans. There is a movement afoot in Sacramento that if projects are not in your active transportation plan, then they will be disadvantaged for grant application fundings through the ATP program. So we need to have an active transportation plan. So through the grant, we propose to update our bicycle planning and create an active transportation planning and meet all the criteria for that to remain eligible for funding. Secondly, we have coordinated in working with Carl and Caltrans with the Park Service and the Forest Service and other partners to identify needs on the 120 corridor, particularly as they relate to Yosemite National Park and getting in and out of the park. We've participated in a number of meetings in that regards, and the feedback we got from Federal Highways is they think that there should be a corridor plan, at least in one region, to identify what the highest priorities are on those corridors in the gateway communities feeding into the national park to address some of their problems. So, and then that would lend itself towards future funding of those improvements. So with that, we would propose to do a congested corridor plan for Highway 120. Certainly we know this summer there was backups at the gate going into Yosemite, sometimes 3 hours long. Very poor communication to the people that are driving up there to find out that was the situation. YARTS buses are also impacted by backups. They don't have any express lanes. So this gives us an opportunity to kind of work with all the different public agencies and the public along 120 to identify potential solutions and put it in a plan. So those are the 2 projects that we're proposing. Certainly we'd be open to any suggestions you have as well.
Okay.
No questions?
Any questions or comments? Any public comment? All right, I'll bring it back to the board.
I move that we direct staff to submit 2 applications for the Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grants Program, Tuolumne Active Transportation Plan, and State Route 120 Yosemite National Park Complete Streets Congested Corridor Plan.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Item 6, consideration of Caltrans' new adaptation planning grant program.
Yes, Mr. This is a relatively new grant opportunity for adaptation plans to consider climate change. I'm going to ask Alex to kind of go through the grant possibilities. We did not come up with any projects for this process. There were a number of suggestions in committee about possible drainage studies in the county. They seem to be a little more focused on individual culverts that were not working properly rather than a county-wide drainage study of some sort. But that's the only suggestions that came out of it, and they really weren't helpful. But with that, I'm going to ask Alice to kind of run through the program briefly in case you guys have some ideas. Otherwise, it's just an information item.
Thanks, Darren. This is a new planning grant through Caltrans through SB1 that was just recently passed. And this particular adaptation planning grant focuses on California's transportation infrastructure when it relates to climate. So some of the potential projects you could look at is you could look at a vulnerability study at some of the different risks, including precipitation, flooding, landscaping, wildfire, and extreme heat are some suggestions. And some of the different impacts you would look at would be stormwater damage. You'd also look at it through a discipline, so you'd be looking at it through roads, trails, airports, roads. So this is a new program that's going to be around for the next 3 years. There's going to be $7 million available. So we just wanted to bring this item before you guys just to make sure you guys are aware of it. And if you guys have any ideas for projects, we'd be more than interested as well, too. So
I have a question. Would this apply to a stormwater master plan?
I believe that's a potential project out of this, because the thinking on that is that with climate change, you're going to have more intense rainfall, and you could want to take a look at how much runoff there's going to be, and are your culverts and bridges sized appropriately to handle the additional runoff.
What about culverts? The majority of our culverts on county roads are undersized. Would this fit into a study of looking at the culvert sizing?
I believe it could get down to that level, and I don't know that we even have kind of a region-wide drainage study that we've ever done that I'm aware of. I know when I was in Southern California, that was something they did. They had the entire valley covered in a drainage study, and they knew exactly how much is coming down. I think our studies tend to be a little more site-focused.
It's the first thing you do. I'm going to just go use Pine Mountain Lake as an example. Of the culverts were put in based on a master drainage study, and the size of the culverts were 12 inch, 24, 18, whatever. Later on, when the culverts, now these culverts are 45 years old, and they're starting to rot, to wear out. And so I had some work done, this has been 15 years ago, that showed that all those culverts that were put in under that initial study were undersized. And I don't know, from the standpoint of if a community could be a part of that, or does it have to be a government agency?
Well, I'd have to look at that. When I look at these, particularly drainage studies, it's outside the expertise of any of your current staff at the TCTC. I'd be looking real hard at the experts in our community like Duke or others to kind of lead that effort in specialized areas like drainage. But we could certainly put our name on application, facilitate perhaps community service districts or the like. If it's, mainly we're looking for you to work with your staffs or our partner agencies, and if they're interested, let's talk and see if we can put something together. And I can't say for certain what group you're looking at, and if it would work, well, we could certainly look at it.
I think about Grove Community Service District and their ponds, their sewer ponds, the drainage around those that could cause overflow into the Pine Mountain Lake. So Duke's anxious to get up there and talk, it looks like.
We've applied in the past for grants, funds through IRWIM and some other programs for doing these drainage studies countywide to augment some of the roads. Most of the subdivisions, as you say, they had a master drainage study. I think of Pine Mountain Lake. And generally speaking, if they were using the Caltrans standard, which most people did, they tend to oversize when they did that program because they anticipated additional development or infill or hard surfaces, so they tend to oversize them. I know Lake Don Pedro's that way in several of the subdivisions, but in areas where we have older roads, southwest part of the county, where we had the wagon roads that became this, became that. Almost in every case, those culverts are undersized, as you point out.
So would it be a project that we could look at to, I mean, wouldn't it be helpful to have that grant to do that study to?
We've tried many ways and different agencies to try to get that funded, but we weren't successful. But I don't know that this program can do that.
I think this is maybe a good fit. Perhaps if you've already submitted grant applications, we can take a look at that without having to reinvent what you're trying to do and update cost and schedules and maybe submit something.
That's one thing nice about having done those grants and then have them fail is you can dust them off and reuse them.
Save the paper.
Yep.
All right, that sounds.
So we'll work with the
Sense to me.
county on that.
And work with the city on the possibility of a stormwater management plan.
I'm not for that.
Oh, boy.
You need to move over here, John. You need to be on this side of the table with me.
You would have to work with TUD on something like that, right?
I'm sorry, one more time, George.
You'd have to work your partnership with TUD to work on something like that?
Not on stormwater.
I imagine, I don't know. It's just not my bailiwick. I'd probably look towards guys like Jerry Ficello and others to help me put something together and help me identify who the stakeholder agencies are. That Caltrans would certainly be one of them because all the drainages go right through across state highways, and I think there'd be a number of agencies participating.
This is something that we do not have, and based upon our infrastructure's age, it would be of value for the future if there's any dollars available for replacement, et cetera.
Yeah, and the good news is this 3-year program, so if the city wanted to put together an application to develop a drainage study for the city, and it doesn't get funded this go-around, we can keep resubmitting it and hopefully get funding at some point.
One of the items I'm seeing, extreme weather event evacuation planning. That might be something to look at, because I know we have some communities where it's tough to get out when the time comes. We have a few of those. I'm just kind of looking at the list on page 7.
All of those roads that go to nowhere except to your house.
All right, anything else on this item?
No.
Any public comment? All right, seeing none, I think we're on to reports.
Mr. Chairman, I have a number of reports, so I'll try and go through them quick. Feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions. I just wanted to point out that we have met with Caltrans folks, and we provided a letter identifying priority safety projects around the county, along with some prioritization mapping to help in that regards. And Caltrans is receptive to, particularly with all the new SB1 funds that they have, to doing additional safety projects in our county. So we've come up with a list of different locations and that we've identified as a priority and proposed a few improvements at some of those locations. Other locations, we simply asked for a safety study. We will likewise be working on a letter. I think I'll bring it forward in all likelihood to your next agenda, identifying other operational improvement needs on the state highway system. As you look at the county's budget, it's increased by $900-something thousand this year with SB1. It's going to rise up to $2, $3, $4 million in the subsequent years, almost a doubling of their road budget. Caltrans is likewise going to experience the same kind of influx of funding. They have a number of projects in the queue, but they are actively trying to work with our community to identify projects to move forward. They do recognize, I believe, that there may be an attempt to repeal SB1, so they want to make sure that they're working with communities and delivering projects that the communities see as priorities. So the people that are paying that extra gas tax are getting projects that benefit them. So, again, I'm going to work with Duke and others on a list, and we're going to bring that forward next month for your consideration. And if you can... That's on my list. So that's what I need, is I need you to tell me. If you think of things, email me, shoot it, and I'll make sure it gets on the list appropriately. All right. The urban greening grant for Stockton Road was not approved for funding. That was the project to put in sidewalks and landscaping on Stockton Road from the fairgrounds all the way up to Washington Street. But we now have that grant application written, and it can be recycled like many others.
I bet we'll find a use for that.
I think so.
And that was, just so the public knows, that was the grant that we applied for the Vision Sonora project that was from Washington Street down Stockton Road to past the fairgrounds.
Yeah. Okay, and then good news, the city did submit a funding application for $722,000, I think was the amount, for active transportation program grants for improvements on Washington Street 49 at the Red Church, and it is recommended for funding. It should go to the CTC, I believe, at their October meeting, so that's really good news. That's the first of maybe 14 applications to the ATP fund that has actually been funded. So that's good news.
Is it likely they'll approve, or we don't
Yeah,
know?
very rarely do they change staff, not go with staff recommendation.
Okay.
And also noted, that's another Vision Sonora project.
Yes.
A safety project at that intersection.
Yes. Bad news, the county submitted a project for sidewalks along Fifth Avenue, both north and south of Highway 108. It did not get recommended for funding. It had a relatively low score of 61. I think it took an 80 to get funding, and I would note that the city's project had an 81, so it just barely made it.
Made it.
I have reached out to the staff at CTC that reviewed it and scored that project. They gave us some feedback that I've conveyed back to county staff on maybe making the application a little stronger next time around.
You know, it's surprising, with as much foot traffic that you have in that area. You've got the school, you've got the people coming down the 108 corridor all the time with no place to walk. At night in the rain, I've had some near misses over the many years. It would seem like it would score higher, but.
I think it's a really good project. I think if we could come up with some local match, it would make it more competitive. I think there's also, it was scored down because it didn't appear to have enough public outreach, particularly with the school, but in fact, the staff had done that work, but didn't really mention it too much in the application, I guess. I think that the project itself is strong, but we need to tell the story better.
Mm-hmm.
And it might fare well better the next time. And even CTC staff said, looking at it, it's a pretty good project. Don't give up on it yet. So I wish that your TCTC staff was a little more engaged on the preparation of those grant applications as they get drafted, not just seeing a final at the end of the process.
Okay, so maybe we can get everybody more engaged.
Yeah.
Right,
Tell
Duke?
the story. I want to mention on Tuesday, we had a kickoff meeting for the State Route 49 Complete Streets project. This is the project that we received I think it was $248,000 grant from Caltrans to plan pedestrian and bicycle ways that links Columbia College with Sonora and Sonora with Jamestown along the 108-49 corridor. We started that project up on Tuesday. We'll probably be going out with a consultant contract before too long. At the kickoff meeting, we specifically engaged Caltrans, and SB 1 provides funding through the congested corridor program, but you have to have a congested corridor plan to access those funds. And as what I'm told is in Sacramento, they were discussing how to implement this funding for this program, and there was discussion about not leaving out rurals, and lo and behold, Sonora and Tuolumne County was specifically mentioned as a rural community with real congestion problems. So Caltrans has been successful in getting funding through the agency to help us develop this congested corridor plan. They're specifically going to focus probably on the stretch of 49 from Jamestown up to the north side of Sonora. That's the congested areas. They want to focus on that, come up with solutions. This is really helpful to us because in our RTP, the next major project to be built with the State Transportation Improvement Program funds, and I'll back up and remind you that you have about $5-6 million in that fund that is ready to move on to another project, but we don't have a project ready. And we've identified in the RTP the next major project is widening Highway 108-49 through Jamestown, roughly a $13 million project. When we began to initiate those discussions, we had some people advocating that instead of stopping on the east end near Sierra Motors, extended up to the cutoff at Stockton Road. And then on the west end, people suggested, well, go to Belmooney, and then go to Harvard Mine, and then go to Chicken Ranch, and then maybe all the way down to Montezuma Junction. And next thing you know, I've got a $100 million project and $5 million to build it with. So this congested corridor plan will allow us to really hone in on what the greatest need is, and set the project limits where appropriate, engage the public in that process, better identify cost, scope, and schedule, and then allow us perhaps next year to begin to pull that $5 million, $6 million out of reserves and put it into the engineering, design, and environmental components of the project, and then set the stage for later, then leveraging maybe some interregional funds, maybe some of this congested corridor funds. If we can throw some traffic impact mitigation funds at it, that might help us access some other SB1 funds. So we'll develop a funding strategy as well as part of this effort. So it's good news.
Good news.
Okay, and then one last thing. Tomorrow we have our kickoff meeting for the Central Sierra Zero Emission Vehicle Readiness Planning effort. This is the one that will allow us to work with our 4 neighboring counties to the north to plan where we should have charging stations for electric vehicles, and also look at public fleets that might be able to convert over electric vehicles. Certainly when we've reached out to county fleet maintenance folks, they've expressed an interest in some of their light-duty vehicles being electric.
Just to think about, the county owns a parking lot in downtown Jamestown we purchased a few years ago. I think it would be an ideal place for an electric charging station. It'd be an excellent spot for an electric charging station. It's, there's no other places that county owns. We wouldn't have to be dealing with anybody, that's
So
the good
noted.
thing. So, make it
And I know
X
the
on that
city
one.
has a few parking lots as well.
And mention it to Carl, tell Carl to thank me for that, would you?
Yeah. I'll let him know you're advocating for his
All right,
district.
thank you.
When we start the design of the transit project, it'd be nice to plan in something like that within that project as well.
Sure. And that's all I have for reports.
That's it? I thought you were on a roll. Mr. Baker, are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I brought this month is the notice of funding opportunity for Tiger grants. This comes around every year, or is it every other year? It's transportation investment generating economic recovery. It's federal money. The applications are due October 16th. This has gone out to all the agencies. There's an emphasis on transportation for rural communities. The limits are minimum 1 million, maximum 25 million for rural areas. So that's out there. And besides that, any follow-up on previous items from the board? Any questions?
Thanks for the turnouts on new Priest grade. I've had a couple comments where it's been kind of nice to be able to get around a bus or in my monthly article, I did thank Caltrans for the work that they did on Old Priest grade and the new Highway 120. So send me your email address and I'll send you a copy of the article and you can pass it on.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, those that may have noticed or may not have noticed the fact that the stoplight at Washington Street and Stockton, the timing has been changed on that. It's added 5 seconds additional to people crossing Washington Street from the Sonora inside to the other side of the street. My understanding is it gets people about halfway across the road at this point with the 5-second increase. So I'd like to thank you and Caltrans for instituting that. And I guess you're kind of looking for any feedback from the public that that's working for them or not working for them, whatever the case may be. And they could let us know or let you know what their feelings are.
Absolutely.
But certainly is a help.
Yeah.
Is that permanent or a trial?
It was proposed to be done and then monitored, essentially. So if it's working, I don't think there's any reason they would undo it. From what I've seen, just being there, it changes the dynamic considerably. The vehicles are in decision mode, and the people are in the street, and you no longer have that race across
Right,
the
you don't have that
intersection and then
rush.
finding out, oh, there's people coming. So.
Now, if you could stop cars making a right-hand turn coming south on Washington to turn right on Stockton using what shouldn't be a lane
Yeah.
to do that, if you could do something to prevent that, because a lot of times people don't realize, the pedestrians don't realize that there's always a car coming up in some place it shouldn't be.
So
And
that's in the concept for the city's project for, Washington from the intersection to Church, is to do a little bulb out there, which will remove that. There won't be room to do the turn, plus you'll be shortening the crosswalk, which will benefit the pedestrians also. So that's what we're hoping to go with that.
Well, that was a nice lead-in to what I wanted to bring up. And that is, we had an accident last night at Jackson and Washington Street where a young mother and a 1-year-old child were hit. We've brought this up several times about the crosswalks, and somehow we need to make it a priority that we do some kind of safety project between Stockton Road and the Red Church. And we have in the Vision Sonora plan, we have that being a project. So I'd like to encourage Darren and Caltrans and the city to see if there's some way that we couldn't look at some kind of an ATP grant for that project, because it's just going to, it seems like even though we just had the CHP out there along with the Sonora Police Department at crosswalks, people are oblivious to, there's a percentage of people that are oblivious to people being in crosswalks. So I'm going to keep harping on it until we come up with some kind of a solution. Additionally, South Washington Street at 108. I don't know if it's the light or what, but the backup onto Washington Street trying to get onto 108 sometimes is all the way up to the railroad tracks. So if there could be something looked at there. And then I'd also like to encourage Caltrans, along with Darren and the city, to really start looking in depth at the possible roundabout at the Sonora High School. we've had some issues there with people going across the street, and it's only going to get worse. So those are my 3 requests. We just need to find money to do it with.
I think the first step is maybe we get together, and Carl, I'm sure, would help me coordinate a meeting with Caltrans and the city and maybe law enforcement if appropriate to kind of identify some of the solutions and look for the funding. I agree an ATP project may be appropriate. There is a call for project that we're expecting to go out in January, February 2018. There's going to be more money in that program than we've ever seen, thanks to SB1. If we're going to put an application together in cooperation with Caltrans, we need to start right away. So we'll start facilitating that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up on that, with Vision Sonora, the city is well positioned to propose those for the ATP. You know, as Darren was saying, not having latest and greatest active transportation plan somewhat disadvantages the county. I'm speaking the region county. Vision Sonora, you know, kind of takes the place of that within the context of the plan. In looking at an active transportation plan, you know, that will include the city too, typically. It doesn't have to, it depends on how you want to scope your project, but so typically things that are in existing plans like that get swept up into the master plan, and again, that just improves your support of your applications for things like that. I guess just reminding me, at the same time, active transportation plans typically have an emphasis on safe routes to school, essentially a survey of the schools, what the issues are at the various schools, so that we can get those all addressed. So that's kind of the long-term part. But as far as the corridor that you're talking about, the groundwork is pretty much there, the planning work. So it's really a matter of getting those applications together and then getting the funding, getting it built. And so, again, I'll be happy to meet with Darren, Tim, whoever we need to move that forward.
Okay. Duke, you're up.
We went to a meeting on active transportation meeting dealing with Caltrans staff and the Groveland improvements. We had a real nice meeting, talked about the walkway improvements that would go from basically Ponderosa all the way out to the elementary school and part way up Ferretti. We had done a similar project, but we had been looking at Ferretti. But this one, hopefully we worked on the scope of what that would cover and had a good meeting. We also had a meeting with Caltrans staff very recently about State Route 49 corridor study between Columbia and Jamestown. And as Darren said, that southernmost limit or western limit we're still working on. So anyhow, very, very productive meeting. The SB1 projects, I just received something from the state. They're talking about the projects and where the various counties are. Currently, when I received a report dated September 8th, 6 out of the 58 counties had submitted, and there are 4 required elements, and they're still waiting for all these rules to come down. So several of the 6 that were submitting were incomplete applications. So everybody's going to be rushing because the deadline is October 16th. We have prepared a proposal for the SB1 funding, going to the Board of Supervisors Transportation Committee meeting on September 18th and be followed up at the Board of Supervisors on the 19th. And in that proposal, there's improvements to be made to some culverts. There's traffic signal upgrades, which is the basically the newer technology, so you go away from the loops and you go to the little cameras and some other electronic stuff that not really too sure what it is, but brings it up to the higher upgrades that most of the maintenance entities prefer. Also, most of the money is going to be going into some rehabilitation and surface treatments on 3 projects. One is Seco Street, Campo Seco, and Algerine Road. Another on Jacksonville Road, and one on Yankee Hill, Jackson Street. And anyhow, the whole purpose of this is to get it into our budget so then we can move it ahead and get it to the CTC within the deadline period. Another item that we're looking at, I have a whole series of upcoming items. We're going to be advertising the Tuolumne Park and Ride, the county service area snowplow contract. The county service areas are subdivisions that are not accepted in the maintained system, and we have several miles of those. Ratification of the reconstruction project for Jackson Street, Yankee Hill Road in Columbia. The 2017 storm damage pavement repair. Ratification of the Tuolumne County Bridge Preventative Maintenance Program. All of these are slated for October 3rd. And then the Jacksonville Road Bridge Preventative Maintenance Program, and then the Hardin Flat Bridge Replacement Project. One of the objects too is we had a meeting with Caltrans staff, a guy by the name of Robert Umida, who's an appraiser, and I met with Quincy Yaley, who is our CRA planning staff, and we talked about protecting of the corridors, stage 3. We also talked about primarily general plan upgrades potential for some of these lands, because if this excess land has a better general plan designation, then it would, some of the sales from those excess parcels, some of the excess parcels stay in the county of origin, and we can use them to purchase additional right-of-way in the future. So it benefits the county to have the better designations. So that was a very productive meeting. One of the things when you were discussing the project in Sonora and the concerns with the sidewalks, Darren and I have a tool in the county that we utilize quite often, and it maps where the accident histories are, and it by segment and by intersection, and we can even filter that information, which we just recently did, to look at just bicycle and pedestrian conflicts. Unfortunately, the city of Sonora is not part of that mapping effort, so I'm thinking that that would be a very useful thing to help assist in your efforts to get some corrections done in downtown Sonora. And as far as working with Darren on the ATP, I'm glad to do that. The Roca Park charging station, I'll make sure that gets back to the powers that be with, it's kind of managed by facilities management, but we'll see where we can go. They worked on the one elsewhere. That's it.
Thank you. Any other reports? All right, with that, Tuolumne County Transportation Council is adjourned. Thank you very much.